Welcome to Toffee TV. It is the Everton News Daily. Richard Masters today, the Premier League CEO, spoke at a sports committee following up on the Premier League, or calls for an independent regulator to govern the Premier League. While he was there, he was asked about the points deduction that Everton have received and facing further charges, and Nottingham Forest facing further charges. He was less than complimentary, it seemed, about the size and stature of both Everton and Nottingham Forest. This is what he had to say.
On the sort of Everton front, that
how long was this?
Can you understand why there will be a degree of cynicism among fans? That we've talked a lot about the cliff edge between the Premier League and the rest of football. There does appear to be a cliff edge inside the Premier League, where if you're a really big club, and therefore you can not only afford the best players but the best lawyers, then you get embroiled in legal matters that take 10 years or never come to fruition. Whereas if you're Everton or Forest, there's an expedited procedure, to use your phrase, where suddenly in the middle of the season they get knocked 10 points off and get threatened with relegation, where on the pitch they wouldn't deserve that. Do you understand the cynicism that develops around that?
I do understand the issue, and I've tried to separate the two, in the sense that I've said that those standard corrections are for everybody. They're not just for small clubs. So if anybody was found to be in breach and put forward their PSR calculation that was above the threshold, then we'd be doing exactly the same thing on exactly the same time frame. There's a very separate process for the other cases, because they are fundamentally different in nature. Unfortunately, I can't go into all of that today.
Champions, Everton, twice European Cup winners, Nottingham Forest. Dear Richard, oh dear. Surely he's not going to be the CEO for much longer, as he makes things go from bad to worse. He also said he thought the process wasn't messy. He also said that football without fans is nothing. A line that is trotted out, but with no real conviction behind it. We all can see what is going on. We can see that they allowed Manchester City to decide when they'd face their charges, which is fine, and well played, Manchester City, for not having whatever the Premier League say. But they certainly seem to be going after Everton. And I'm sorry, but he has let the whole Premier League down today, Richard Masters, with those comments. That it's such a derogatory thing to say about two members of the Premier League. How dare you call some clubs small within that? It's an absolute disgrace. And if you're the Premier League board, you will be looking to replace him as soon as possible, because he is damaging the brand unbelievably so. He also had a say on Everton's takeover. 777 been waiting to hear for a while. I think we're at week 18 now of the process. They were apparently told it'd take at least 12 weeks, but that was what they were given. It'd be done in December. It hasn't been. They were also then told that it'll probably have an answer before the 12th of January. That was last week. There's still no answer. So when he was pushed today on where they are up to with making that decision regarding 777's takeover of Everton, this is what he had to say.
Okay, and when will Everton find out if the takeover by 777 partners is going to be confirmed by the Premier League?
As soon as we have completed the process, and unfortunately some processes take a matter of weeks. Some, if we haven't had satisfactory answers to the questions that we have asked, it takes a lot longer.
And so how long is this one going to take?
He's already been running for a number of weeks.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, just from if you were looking at it from the outside, if they're not giving you satisfactory answers, then they don't pass the test, surely. So therefore, if you're not going to pass them, then fail them quickly. Or put it on their toes that we haven't had this. We're not happy with the answer you've given. We're giving you 7 days to come up with the answer for this, and this. It's in nobody's interest for this thing to drag on. See, this is where I am really struggling with the Premier League. They can go on about, they're all shareholders and we're all equally important to us, and he can come up with slimy answers and all of that. But the reality is you are there to help the members. You're there to get to the right thing for each club as much as you can without favouring it, but helping it. And all that we're seeing them put Everton through the mill, really, with points deductions, referrals, dragging the heels over 777. It should be in everyone's interest to conclude this very quickly, as quickly as possible. So put it back onto 777, give them timescales, but get it done quickly. If, like I said, if they're not going to pass it, fail them, by all means, but do it quickly. If they are going to pass it and you've got no reason why you haven't agreed to their takeover, then do that quickly. Because you're taking the piss now. You really are. Moving on. Sean Dyche has given his pre-match press conference today ahead of the Crystal Palace game. Obviously, before he got onto the Crystal Palace game, he was asked his opinion on the latest decision to charge Everton and Forest, I guess, or refer Everton and Nottingham Forest. This is what the manager had to say on that.
Yeah, I knew before the news breaking, not too far before. They fill me in when I need to know basis. I think it's, I think one of them a bigger picture view, if you like. I've been here approaching a year, and my timeline, and certainly by the recent stats and facts, I think it's the bottom 3 or 4 net spend over the last 3 or 4 seasons. So there's a start point of the club motioning to do things correctly. Since I've been here, as you know, we let players go out of contract who some we would have kept, but we couldn't do that. We've been working hard to lower everything here. And we sold 3 young players in the timelines we were given to make sure the money was in. We wouldn't have normally sold them young players, quite obviously. New stadium speaks for itself. The effect that'll have on the city, as much as anything, the Evertonians. The old stadium being developed for good causes, which you certainly know of. Alongside that, trying to still put a team out there that can be competitive, of course, and all the things that go with that, still trying to work within the numbers, signing players who we don't even do deals until they're a year's time, and trying to find ways to still be competitive as we could do. And then, you sort of end up with an on-pitch sanction, and you're like, well, we're trying to do everything we can to solve all these conundrums. There's mistakes we made, I'm sure, down the years there has been, but that's natural part of football, particularly with player training. It's not an exact science. It's very difficult, in fact. And you come away with it, and we get the initial spell, which is still the focus, the appeal side of things, and you lose 10 points, and you think, well, it's an on-pitch sanction, but we've actually been cutting the idea of being on-pitch powerful, by resources, by trying to do the right things. So it's a bit of a tough one in my timeline of a year to take, and we still haven't found out about the appeal yet. We're still waiting on that and news on that. But I think that's a broad view of there's a lot going on at this football club. They've tried to do right, and then within amongst that, or shortly before I got here, or relatively shortly, a war, and you've got sanctions on ownership and all that. So it's a strange situation to get an on-pitch sanction of 10 points, which we're still waiting on the appeal, quite obviously. Who knows what comes next? So we've got to watch this space. So really, I suppose that encapsulates a sort of a year's view of what's been going on. I'm trying to give you a feel of it, and I must make it clear, that's my common sense feel view as a football person. I haven't got the minutiae of the rules and the regulations. That's for the powers that be and the lawyers and all stuff like that. But I think sometimes you put all that in the melting pot and you go, well, there's no on-pitch advantage there. And yet we get an on-pitch sanction. So that is a tough one, without a shadow of a doubt. Now, we hope there's better news comes out of the appeal. Then the next bit comes along, and that's kind of something that's encapsulated in all of that. Who knows what comes next? I think we're all wondering, we're all scratching our heads, and certainly we're hopeful that a change in what's going on occurs, and we get some points back, and it's probably looked at a bit different.
Time we've really heard from him, he's always been very guarded, maybe, or just played it with a straight bat, sat it down, parked it, as he says, over there, and got on with the job. But he went into a lot more detail there, didn't he, and talked about obviously players having to leave and who the Everton might have wanted to keep, and basically saying that we've complied as much as we could, stayed within it, and they still charged us not once but twice, clearly showing that he feels it's unjust. He said that, didn't he, as a football person? So I mean, I don't know. Richard Masters today, he hasn't covered himself in any glory. And I guess the real star today was Julie Clark, who was sat behind him. He was the secretary of the fan advisory board, sat behind him, pulling faces at his answers with an Everton regalia on. So well played to her there for embarrassing Mr. Masters. Sean Dyche moved on to football stuff and confirmed that Abdoulaye Doucouré and Seamus Coleman are both doubtful for tomorrow's FA Cup third round replay against Crystal Palace. Seamus has got a tight hamstring, so I'm absolutely convinced he won't be part of the game with that. And said Doucouré's more fatigue. He's coming back from a hamstring injury, so is that fatigue a little bit of tightness in his hamstring, or is it one of them where they're just going to have to wait and see? We'll have to see what happens with him. He may well end up on the bench. Doucouré, I don't expect to see Seamus Coleman, though. He did say that Ashley Young is back training, but this game is too soon for him. He's more than likely going to be available for Everton's trip. Well, if Everton get through the FA Cup fourth round match against Bolton or Luton, if we don't get through, then he'll be back, I'm sure, for the trip to Fulham as well. And the reason for Dominic Calvert-Lewin's red card that was rescinded has come out today. And it was rescinded because the panel who looked at it were unanimous in saying that referee Chris Kavanagh made a clear and obvious error. And this will come back and reflect badly on Chris Kavanagh for not having the balls to stick with his on-pitch decision. He had a clear view of it, seeing that there was nothing in it. Was called to the screen by Craig Pawson, which to me is a worse mistake, and Pawson should be hammered for it. But then he allowed Craig Pawson to convince him that it was a red card, and therefore, I suppose, Kavanagh's going to pay the price for it, for not having courage in his conviction and going with what he said. He should have said to Craig Pawson, "Why are you calling me to the screen? I've seen it live. There's nothing in it. On we go. Football is a contact sport." But that is the reason why Dominic Calvert-Lewin's red card was rescinded. The crazy thing in all this, of course, is apparently it stays on his record. So if Dom is to receive another red card this season, he will get a 4-match ban as opposed to 3, which again is one of the crazy and stupid rules that are in our game, unfortunately. Right, that is it for the News Daily. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, and put in the comments below what you think about Richard Masters. See you later.